Good evening to you all. Um, my name is Dr. Fundi Lenyati, alternatively known as Dr. Fundi. Welcome to the Dr. Fundi channel. This is a 4-year-old digital health channel. This is a place where we converse about various matters that have to do with healthcare. We found that mainstream media doesn't always give, due attention to matters of health. So we thought we need to fill the gap. So we've been around for the last 4 years. At the beginning, we were focusing a lot on matters that had to do with COVID-19, educating people and all of that. But we've since transformed to focus on profiling individuals who are doing great things in the healthcare space. And in the run-up to the elections on the 29th of May, we thought we need to be able to invite political parties and independent candidates so that they can come and unpack for our audience that is watching via YouTube or via Facebook, and a few sometimes they join us on the webinar itself. So you may not see a lot of people on the webinar, but there are a lot of people who are following via Facebook and also via YouTube. So today it's one of those webinars, because it's a series of webinars. We've hosted quite a number of political parties already. We've hosted at least 2 independent candidates, and today is the day of hosting the United Democratic Movement, which is one of the most established opposition parties in the country. In fact, it was the first, opposition party to break away from the ANC in the democratic era. That was in 1997, when General uh, Bantu Bonke Harrington Holomisa, together with Rolf Meyer, decided that, you know what, they are forming a new party that was going to look at, um, representing people who were looking for an alternative to the governing party. So this is a very old party. I would say almost 27 years old. And today, we were supposed to host General Bantu Bonge Holomisa, but he has done the right thing of saying, let's empower a woman, let's empower a young person who can come and articulate what UDM is all about specifically, and also on matters of health. What is it that the UDM promises the electorate of South Africa as far as matters of health are concerned? And so we will be, taking you through, just tell us, just for you to ease in, you tell us about the party briefly, and then you tell us about your manifesto broadly, but we're going to spend more time on matters of health. All right. So our guest today is Little Honolo, and Little Honolo Nohe Tungamirai. I don't know if I've actually pronounced the surname right, but Little Honolo is going to take us through what the UDM stands for. All right. Now, as I was doing my homework about Little Honolo, one thing that stood out is that she is a businesswoman who's very passionate about the upliftment of other women. She is a founder and CEO of the Lift Women, executive director at Sticky Barbecue, a franchise company. You're part of the Women in Tech SA, and generally you like tackling women issues. You're passionate about matters of governance, to an extent that you obtained some qualification with the Institute of Directorships of South Africa. I think Chartered Director of South Africa, and you involved in a number of programs to actually empower women as far as governance in organizations and them being part of boards of directors. You've got a passion around matters of cyber risk management, which is another big area when it comes to the IT space. You say you are a hard worker, a perfectionist, you are dedicated work, you are a reliable person, and you thrive when you are put through challenges. And I think getting into the political space may just be one of those challenges that you are going to show us that you are dynamic, you are flexible, and you are not only a businesswoman, but actually you can also be a very good politician. Our understanding is that you one of the candidates for the UDM for the Gauteng, province. Little Honolo, welcome to the Dr. Fundi channel.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I feel like you have really, really done your homework, except for, knowing what my DNA is. So I'm pleasantly surprised at how much you have, empowered yourself with when coming to Little Honolo Nokhetunga is. I am representing the UDM, very proudly so. We are undergoing some major transformation, as you can see. Contrary to popular belief, there are very capable women that represent the UDM, and I am one of them.
Yeah.
So just briefly about the UDM, I'm not going to go in detail because it has been a well-established organization since the last 27 years. And what we pride ourselves for is in matters of dealing with corruption. There are various examples that I can give, such as the recent saga with the Speaker of Parliament, who has now had to account due to the work that the UDM has done. If you look at previous matters that we have also elevated, we've elevated issues such as the pension fund through the PIC, as well as the Steinhoff matter, and also the SA8 Takatso deal, which has subsequently then come to an end. So we pride ourselves for corruption, and that is one of the reasons that I align myself as a professional with the UDM, because I couldn't be a hypocrite and say that I stand for issues against corruption and then align myself with a party that doesn't stand firmly against corruption. So I strategically align myself with the UDM because of a proven track record when coming to issues of corruption. But as the UDM, we see ourselves as a party that is for all South Africans. It's not a party specifically for the Eastern Cape, as is what people believe. It's a party for all members of society, and including women, people living with disability, etc. And obviously, it's been founded by Gen Bantu Holomisa, who is a great mentor, and is one that is slowly giving us the challenge of representing the brand, as you can see.
Beautiful, beautiful. As somebody who is into governance, I would have put, question marks behind your name if you had aligned yourself with a party that is big on corruption.
Absolutely.
So I think your choice of a political home is actually aligned to what you do in terms of your day-to-day work, and the fact that you are, big on matters of governance, at board level and all of that.
Yeah.
And when we look at your billboards out there, that's what you guys are saying. You're saying, root out corruption,
Absolutely.
basically. That's the big thing that you guys are positioning yourself, around anti-corruption stance. But besides corruption, what are your other priority, areas as far as your manifesto is concerned?
So other priority areas are around governance and accountability. So as you've
Yes.
rightfully indicated, I come from a governance background, and one of our key priorities are regarding governance and accountability. So we ensure that, whatever resources are meant to be aligned for specific deliverables are achieved.
Yeah.
So that
Yes.
is the big, big, big highlight. And this also spills over, by the way, to the health industry, because where there is good governance practices and good ethics, one gets to get the results that they anticipate for a particular project. So that
Yeah.
is one aspect. And then we've spoken obviously about the zero tolerance to corruption. I just want to speak specifically to a view that we hold regarding how corruption must be dealt with. And one of the key areas that we want to really hone in on is having special courts that actually address corruption. And that also speaks to accountability. So where there is a focus on these particular areas of challenges such as corruption, we want to take it a step further and put in place infrastructure or yes, infrastructures that are going to assist us actually to deal with corruption. Then the last or one of the other areas that I want to highlight in our manifestos regarding the professionalization of public services. What is going on currently is that you're having unqualified individuals deployed to certain areas that don't have any clue of what running a public services organization looks like. So you will have situations where you have individuals appointed to run the health services sector, for an example, and
Yeah.
it's not being correctly run. Budgets are allocated, but you don't actually get to derive the value that those services are meant to give to the ordinary citizen because of the fact that there's no professionalization of the public services sector.
Yes.
Among
So when I was looking, at your manifesto, just at a high level, using the News 24 manifesto meter, the things that stood out was obviously about corruption, where you guys are saying corruption destroys our freedom, right? But other things that you mentioned, are issues around load shedding, issues around water and sanitation, irrigation schemes, that is more I think in the rural areas, issues around the economy, issues around jobs, and issues around health. I was happy to see health in your top 5 of issues that you guys, have identified as issues that need to be addressed. Now, we have been almost 50 days without load shedding. Is it still therefore any issue for you guys? The fact that it's been almost 50 days without any load shedding? Or you think it's just electioneering?
Honestly, I think it's electioneering because the question then is what happened to the other months where we struggled and businesses closed down due to load shedding? I am aware that there's been a high amount of diesel that is being burned for us to be able to not endure load shedding just until the 30th. So I believe by the 30th, we will start to see the ramification of exactly the choices we made. So I think for now, we don't have load shedding, but post the 30th, we are going to see the ramification of what has been transpiring or taking place at the moment. And that's my personal view, not the party's view.
Okay, all right. No, that's fine. All right. Maybe let's zoom in into the area of health. I think the issue of whether this is electioneering or not, it will easily be solved because by the 30th, or the 1st of June, we will know whether this was electioneering or not, as far as the load shedding is concerned. Let's focus on the healthcare side. Now, as we sit here today, about 2 to 3 hours ago, the president of the country signed the NHI bill into law.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you this question later,
Mm.
but we cannot talk health without
Mm.
talking the major thing that happened today.
Yeah.
What is the stance of the UDM as far as this proposed solution called the NHI fund, which is going to fund the health system of our country, both, which may use public or private, which was signed into today.
So the UDM in principle has no objection to the NHI.
Yes.
What we are concerned about is the fact that there are various stakeholders that do not seem to be in support of this approach or this law. So what we would have wanted to see as the UDM is imbizos or conferences held with different stakeholders to engage further on the detail now that builds up to this NHI. We are aware that it's coming to law, but what we'd want to see is the law and regulation that supports the bill. South Africa is known for its high corruption. So a whole amount of accountability would need to be, come to the fore, transparency, for us to understand how the NHI bill will be implemented. So we are in support of any instrument that gives a better life to the ordinary South African. So in principle, we are saying, yes, if it's going to change the life of an ordinary South African, we are in support. However, it's the detail that we are missing that we'd like to.
So the thing about the devil being in the detail.
Yes, for an example, we would like to find out where the budget for the implementation of this bill is going to come from. Is it the tax? Yeah, the tax man is going to fund it. How is this going to be proportioned? When you look at the current environment now, or the budget, Gauteng has a 165 billion budget, with 70% going towards education and health. But look at the condition that the health sector is in. It's just telling you that there's mismanagement when coming to the fund. So obviously the public and other parties such as ourselves have less confidence in the current governing party based on how we've seen the implementation unfold, not just in the health sector, across the board. So one would have to look at the reprioritization of the budget to ensure that all is adequately allocated. So this great idea in principle is implemented correctly, so it reaches the correct impoverished people of our country as it should.
Lovely. And I think, we just come out of COVID, and there are things that happened there with the monies that were made available for PPEs and other things where, there was a lot of corruption at different levels of government. And so I think the issue of the trust deficit, which makes people to be a bit skeptical around how are the monies going to be used in this big SOE that will be the NHI fund. And I think once again, it's important that those flags are raised quickly before the structures are set up, so that there could be mechanisms that can be put in place to ensure that monies that are intended to ensure access to healthcare for every South African do not go down the leg of a few individuals. That's what I'm hearing you say. You are in support, but you are concerned that the recent past doesn't give the confidence that the monies will be used for what they are intended for.
100%. But to be honest with you, Dr. Fundi, we are no longer looking to the ANC for the solutions going ahead. What we foresee post 29th May as the UDM is a coalition government. So the homework will be for this incoming government to see to it, and to see to finish, to make sure that we derive the value that it's meant to give to the ordinary member. So we are waiting the 29th of May to meet in these imbizos and discuss how the implementation of this law will unfold.
Yeah, see, so I attended the signing ceremony a few hours ago at the Union Building, and one of the journalists asked a question to say, guys, there is the 29th that's coming. Basically, you may not be coming back.
Yeah.
And so what happens in that situation? And the answer was whether the current government comes back or not, because it's been signed into law. Therefore, whoever that comes in, whether it's a group, what do you call them? A group of political parties, whether it's a
Coalitions.
group of political parties that
Yeah.
have formed a coalition or one party that comes in, they have an obligation to implement that which is now law. And therefore, whoever comes in would have to look at how to implement this NHI, which is now, law. Now, you've mentioned something about coalitions. Are you guys, as UDM, part of the, what do you call it, the Moonshoot Pact?
We are not at this stage part of any coalition. Based on the powers that be, we have no objection to working with any party. However, we are waiting the 29th of May, so we can come together as parties or various parties we align with and use our manifestos. So each of us use our manifestos as guiding Bibles or principles, if I can call it that. What we don't want, excuse me, what we don't want is a situation where we are bullied in any form, or the big brother approach is utilized to coerce us in a particular way. We want to use our Bible, which is our manifesto, to guide which entities speak to the values that we believe in as the UDM.
Lovely. Now, when one talks about matters of health, and this is something that I also saw in your, in your health manifesto, you guys have identified what is normally referred to as social determinants of health, because there are things like housing, like access to water, like sanitation, with like jobs, and if one has got a challenge in that area, it does influence health. So, from what I read, you guys are saying, let's not just look at those who are already sick. Let's also look at how do we address those social determinants as a way of preventing ill health, basically. So I just wanted to confirm with you that that is how you guys look at matters of health.
Absolutely. We actually refer to a very serious concern in our community, which is issues around alcohol, alcoholics, etc. So we are all about creating communities that are enabling, that are healthy. So we don't only limit it, for an example, to the infrastructure, which we speak to in the manifesto. By the way, we are saying bring the infrastructure to the people. So we look at the social aspects to imagine what it would take someone to get to a health facility. One would have to most likely get on numerous taxis or even walk long distances to a health facility from the 350 grant. And then come back, sometimes waiting waiting in long queues. So we're saying bring the facilities to the people, but also deal with some of the social ills that speak to the mental health of people, such as alcohol, etc. Yeah. And we also even incorporate issues to do with people living with disability. We don't leave them behind, because what I found personally is when you go through manifestos, you struggle to find where the people living with disabilities fall in. And we actually consider people living with disabilities as well.
Yeah, you guys have also spoken a lot around the issue of substance abuse in the communities, especially affecting the youth, alcohol, and other illicit drugs. Can you just expand why did you guys lift up that issue? Is it an observation you've made in the communities? And could this be as a result of people being stressed and therefore they are escaping from their realities into these kind of substances, that is alcohol or drugs?
Yes. So in my language, we'll say bojala ha bona mathata, bojala ha bona mathata, meaning the issue is not with the alcohol.
It's not the alcohol itself.
It's not, it's the user. So if you look at how communities, especially if you come from what we call townships, or I'm not sure about other areas, but I grew up, for an example, in a township. What you find is family that is heavily affected negatively by substance abuse. And this continues to, in fact, manifest itself now, where a family would be very far ahead, but due to alcoholics, other issues come up. So you have, I think it's a mental health issue that needs to be spoken very much about, but it is a serious concern within communities. And the byproduct of it is actually even GBV. So what you find is, an abuse of alcohol, which then manifests itself in something else. So I do want to speak. I'm not a health expert, but what I can talk about is what I've experienced. What I've experienced or even observed. That yes, in our communities, alcohol is an issue. It's meant to be something to use as for leisure, but it becomes a dependency, especially in instances where people are going through the most, such as now. When you look at the economy today, people are battling even to, meet their financial obligations. Everything has increased. Petrol has risen. Food prices have risen. And that ultimately is leading to people depending on a substance to numb the pain and to assist them to escape for a moment, at least.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I also noted in your manifesto was the issue of traditional healing and traditional healers. Can you just can we go there? I don't know if you're ready to talk about that, but it is something that I picked up in your manifesto, that there needs to be a mechanism to regulate and monitor traditional healing and traditional healers to ensure that there could be exploitation of the traditional herbs. Now, let me just explain. South Africa is one of the countries that is very rich with medicinal plants or indigenous plants with medicinal purposes, which, if it can actually research them properly, a huge economy can come out of that. Because places like China, places like India, places like Brazil, they are actually having economy that is based, in terms of the research of those plants and actually commercializing those. And in South Africa, we are not yet at a point where we are actually commercializing and developing the economy as far as those medicinal herbs. So that's how I understood your guys, but also obviously beyond those medicinal plants that can actually be made use of to develop the economy. It is also the use of traditional healers, knowing that majority Black people, research-wise, do consult traditional healers as the first point of healthcare, because healthcare sometimes can be, in clinics that are far away from where people stay. And therefore, that is the reality. So, but I just wanted you to expand a bit on how you guys look at these matters.
Yes, so maybe let me just speak briefly about it to say that we, as you rightfully pointed out, we rely quite a lot on traditional medicine, but it operates in an informal manner, if I can call it that. So if you look at our manifesto, we really recognize our culture. And we are saying we need to elevate our culture and regulate it. So when we refer to it in the manifesto, we are saying that we recognize medicinal usage by traditional healers, but that we need to regulate so that there's consistency in how it's utilized, but there's also correct usage, if I can call it that. So throughout our manifesto, even when you look at the creativity aspect of it, we are saying we want to bring respect to our culture and the traditional healers, even the traditional leaders. So yes, that's the approach that we are coming when it comes to the health aspect of it, regarding the regulation of it.
Marmoto Angwena in the township, auna the traditional leaders most.
Ditletse, ko Mafikeng ditletse ke tswa Mafikeng ke Motswana. Ditletse.
Okay.
Yes. Although nako gae we are very I'd say a bit modern, you know.
Yeah.
But what I know
Yeah.
is that Nkukwaka, for an example, used to use natural herbs for quite a number of things. And Nedibereka, you know,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. And also maybe I don't know if it's psychological as well. But why certain things, how do you mix this and that, they actually work. So I believe it. I don't necessarily always use it or have easy access to it, but I do believe it because I think some of it, just like the legalization of cannabis, you know, I mean, that's a natural herb, but I mean, it depends on how you utilize it, but your net's got great benefit to it, but it stems from Honeko, you know, from our forefathers.
Okay. All right. So you will see that there is Yonela who is part of this conversation. Now, Yonela is a South African who is under the age of 30. And she's been complaining to me that I don't know which political party I must vote for. I can't seem to connect with any of these parties because these people are talking about things that happened 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And I'm looking for a party that talks to my issues today and a party that is inclusive about people. She is an ally, for example, of people of the LGBTQIA. And she doesn't hear many parties talking around those matters. So I'm going to ask Yonela to just pose a question or two to you. Yonela?
Okay, thank you, Doc. My question is exactly what Doc was talking about. I'm very concerned about inclusivity, specifically of the LGBTQIA community. I just want to hear what efforts you guys go to include the LGBTQIA in your health manifesto and the medical side of things that impact their everyday life, but in general as a party.
This is a very important question, but maybe let me start with the first question that was asked on, you not identifying with a particular party. And I want to urge you, firstly, before you even look at a party, to exercise your right to vote because your future depends on it. That's the first thing I want to say. But the second aspect is regarding the UDM. Also, I'll speak for the UDM and reasons why you should consider the UDM. I mentioned earlier that the UDM is the party for everyone, including different sectors, including different communities, different backgrounds, so everyone. And that includes whatever your preferences may be. We actually even have a provision for it. We've made provision for the LGBT for your preferences. We've made provision for that. So when you look at the structure of the organization itself, you will see that we have a structure called UDEMO, which is the Women Party. That party is meant to deal with issues that speak to the minority, such as women and GBV issues. So where we'd like to see ourselves is in a situation where we have centers that have been put up to deal with certain challenges that women, deal with. So we have young people that are being raised in very difficult circumstances. What we are saying is that we want to create a safety net for people to be able to have their issues attended to. So when you look at the LGBTQIA, it's a very long word. I'm always trying my best to remember how, how it follows, which letter follows which one. We are saying that we don't want to have you feeling, feeling like you're being excluded. So we're saying we have to give you respect, dignity, and individual recognition. So this is our position in terms of the LGBTQIA community. My goodness, what a mouthful. But we're saying we recognize you in a nutshell. We recognize you. We want to give you the respect, the individuality, and dignity that you deserve. And obviously there'll be structures, as I mentioned earlier, where we even educate people on what this represents, because obviously this is not a common, African concept that stems from before. A lot of us are still new to, different type of gender preferences, etc. So I think it's important to say that, we need to educate people on what it means, and that each and every individual needs to be respected for their own preferences. So that's our position in terms of the LGBTQIA community. And then
Thank you so much.
I'm not sure if I've answered your question in its entirety, but firstly, why vote for the UDM? If you look at the expertise as well that we have, I'm coming from business. I've recently joined the UDM from business, and what I bring is my expertise. The reason I've been brought into the UDM is because the UDM takes governance seriously. It takes professionalism seriously. It also realizes that there's a requirement for different sectors and individuals to come together and come up with solutions for this country. So that's the one aspect. And if you look at our team, we're made up of different professionals. I'm from business. There's a colleague of mine, Mthunzi Mdwaba, who is excellent in labor matters. He actually said, I must send my regards, Dr. Fundi. So Mthunzi comes with a wealth of experience in the employment sector. We've got unions, people coming from the unions that will be coming, that are already members of the leadership that we will be leveraging from in terms of policies. There's already been identification of certain solutions that we can bring to the fore, such as a requirement for us to bring an employment policy, industrial policy to deal with some of these aspects. And we leverage a lot from the SGs, SG3 would speak specifically to the health issues, but we deal a lot on the SDGs. In terms of the solutions that we come up with. So there's certain basic rights that a human being must be getting. And a lot of our policies will be speaking to dignity, integrity of the human being, underpinned by the SDGs, if I'm making sense.
Yeah. So thanks for conveying that message from Professor Mthunzi Mdwaba. I know him very well. He has just come back from the ILO, International Labour Organization, where he's been, I think, for over 5 years representing, this part of the world there. And he even stood to be, I think, a Secretary General or DG or something like that for that party. But unfortunately, he didn't really get the support from home. But that's not what we're here to talk about. But I now know that he is part of the UDM. And maybe just at that point, jobs is one of the things that you guys are saying it's a serious issue. We heard yesterday that the unemployment in South Africa is actually somewhere around 39%, and provinces like the Eastern Cape, I think Eastern Cape, Northwest, have got more than 40% of unemployment. And when you look at the youth unemployment specifically, obviously it's much higher than that.
Yes.
Now, what is it that you guys, with experts like Mthunzi Mdwaba, who come from the ILO and with all the other business experience that he has, what is it that as the UDM, you are actually looking to do to try and make a dent, especially to the issue of youth unemployment?
Yeah, so one of the examples I gave is by bringing on board specialists, professionals that understand this environment. So We've already identified with the collaboration of the team through Mtunzi, areas, gaps that currently exist. So we've already done a SWOT analysis, if I can call it that, of the current landscape to identify where the gaps lie. Hence, I raised the issue regarding the employment policy. We're saying we want to reduce employment, but there's no employment policy. There's no industrial policy that can support employment in this country. So we've already done a SWOT as an example, but we've also, looked at various budget allocations, and we'd want to say that we want to reprioritize the budget to allow it to be enabling for employment. So there are various traditional ways that used to be utilized in the past that used to create employment, such as vocational jobs that speaks to carpentry, etc. So we want to make those kind of professions fashionable. Right now, most people would not want their daughters or sons to say they want to be a carpenter, but that in essence creates employment. So if I bring it closer to health, for an example, we'd want to, elevate the infrastructure, and that already would be creating employment. So it's about reallocation of budget and also just identifying ways, different ways in which we can create employment for the ordinary South African. And that's just some of the examples. So there's trainings, there's all types of engagements or instruments that exist. For an example, I'm a product of Talk IT, and what used to happen is you'd go through a particular training for a period and then already be insourced by an entity that dealt with some level of employment. So there has to be some common thinking amongst all the parties or whoever's in parliament to come up with instruments that can allow our young people to come out from the streets and into the workplace. You have your bring a girl to work, elevated differently, apprenticeships. So there's some things that used to be done in the past that used to deal with unemployment. But now, for some reason, we're no longer implementing them. We're sitting now with 700 unemployed doctors. Where have you ever in your life thought that would ever happen? You study for 7 years only to sit at home. So we really need to be intentional about some of the interventions that we've relied on in the past and bring them back again and make certain career, directions or paths fashionable again and reduce the number of people unemployed in this country.
Now, I heard you mentioning Talk IT and that, there were interventions from that side. The issue of entrepreneurship, how do you guys see that as part of, solving the problem of, I'm not saying everybody is cut out to be an entrepreneur, but not everybody has to go and look for a job.
Yeah. And that's what we want to encourage, by the way. Instead of handing out grants like popcorn, what we want to do is to empower our young people so they are self-reliant. So there are DFIs that exist. Your DBSAs, like your IDCs, who should actually be at the forefront of funding SMMEs. But the first thing is young people are not educated on the options that exist for them, but also the barriers to entry are very difficult for young people to play a role in the economy by means of funding from these DFIs. So I think the one aspect is regarding access to funding for young people, but also training on what's available and just, making the environment enabling for young people to operate and run their own businesses. You also find the situation in the PFMA, there's provision that is made for service providers to say you need to pay them in a particular timeline. But what you find is young people are rendering services to the public entity, and it's the very public entity that actually creates difficulty for these entities to operate because they will take 60, 90 days to pay them, which goes against what the PFMA actually says. So the whole ecosystem needs to be enabling for young people to thrive in business in this country.
Now, as somebody who is an established business person, if you're running your entity, what do you think would encourage you to take on more intense, so that you can get people off the street? We've talked about entrepreneurship. We've talked about training people in trade skills, but let's say your business, you are a CEO of a business. What is it that would encourage you, incentivize you to actually take more of young people to give them work exposure?
Because young people come with fresh ideas. We are tired. We are tired of the norm, the old rhetoric. What we are looking for is ideas from young minds. Right now, we are talking about 4IR, and most, I mean, I will talk to my own experience to say, once you introduce a topic or a discussion that the elderly are not comfortable with, you talk less about that discussion. You have less a conversation regarding that. So what I'm saying is the encouraging thing for me to bring in interns would firstly be to hear what they have to say. So they've got a lot of value to contribute in this country, but there's just no space being given to young people to play or participate, a bigger role. That's the first. The second is obviously to reduce unemployment and despondency. Young people are despondent because one, there's no room for them. There's no one handing over the baton. There's no transfer of knowledge. So that's one aspect where you could ensure transfer of knowledge, because you'd bring in young people, teach them enough of what you know, but also leave them and give them room to be innovative and come up with new ways of doing things. They could streamline your processes, because you are stuck with your old thinking ways, that may not necessarily be more efficient. But those are some of the issues that or incentives that would, encourage me to bring in young people in my business.
Lovely, lovely. Now, I was thinking here about tax incentives, so, if you take five kids, for a 12 months period to give them work experience, personally in my company, I would take those 5 or 10 kids in return for some tax, rebates, as a way, because obviously, when you are in business, you are in business to make a profit. But at the same time, we also need to be socially aware of some of the issues. And I think a lot of people would be willing to play a role in taking up the younger people. But the question is, what would be in it for them,
I think my approach was even less from a selfish perspective. It was more to the benefit of the young person rather than myself. So the tax incentive, definitely, but it speaks to my own benefit. It has some sort of selfish view on things, especially in light of the fact that I'm coming as a politician now, which is all about, social issues and giving back and being a servant to the community.
Lovely. So at this time of the interview, when we are left with about 5 minutes or less, we normally ask the political party person and say, you know what, you must do your pitch. I know you started earlier to say people must vote for UDM for this and that, but I'm giving you 3 minutes to tell us, why should people vote for UDM? Basically, it's not even an elevator pitch. Elevator pitch is like very, very short, but here I'm giving you 3 minutes. Tell us why people should consider UDM. There's many people who are hurtful with the parties that they were used to voting for, and they are looking for a change. So why should they consider UDM as the party that they must put that X next to for national, for provincial, and also for regional?
Oh, my goodness. UDM for me represents hope for the ordinary South African. And the reason I'm saying that is because they are intentional. They're the one party whose manifesto is actually lived out. So they don't say they do a particular thing and then say another thing or do another thing. It's the one party that walks the talk. If you visit or you review our manifesto, you will see that they actually live out what they say they stand for. One, they take corruption very seriously. So I've mentioned in the past the various areas in which they've elevated issues of corruption in parliament with only 2 seats in parliament. And best you believe there'll be far more seats than 2 after these elections. But they only have 2 seats in parliament, but they've managed to make an impact in parliament much more than your other parties. I won't mention names.
Bigger parties.
That have up to or more than 200 seats in parliament. That's the first aspect. The second aspect is that UDM has no record. I've never known of any record that speaks to any ill intention or corruption. So they are an ethical organization. So if you're an ethical person that's looking for an organization that speaks to good governance practices, good ethical practices, UDM would be the party for you. If you are looking for a party that accommodates each and every South African, whether women, male, the UDM, and all races, by the way, the UDM would be the party for you to look at. We also take unemployment very seriously and issues that affect our young people. As I mentioned earlier, we have brought on board business individuals to assist us in finding solutions. And what we advocate a lot on is in Bezos. So we believe in consultations. We are that kind of an entity, an organization that speaks to consultations. We want to meet with stakeholders coming from all directions to ensure that all policies are well thought through and all encompassing for all South Africans. So I can go on, but what is useful—
For young people, what do you say to young people?
To young people, you are despondent, you are unemployed, you are discouraged. If you are looking for an organization that is going to uplift you and remove you from the townships, the UDM is the one that you need to look at, because we've got very serious solutions that we are putting in place and policies that are going to speak to unemployment. We have an expert coming from the ILO, which you spoke about earlier, that comes with a wealth of knowledge. Last week, I attended a creativity conference or a round table, and we already identified for the creative industry that they're not accommodated in the LRA, the Labor Relations Act, and neither are they in the ILO. So already we've got advocates that can speak to specific organizations to ensure that they find a voice in those particular infrastructures or in those forums. So my point is that we come with a wealth of knowledge and expertise to eradicate and genuinely eradicate unemployment. And those will be seen over time because, like I said, we did an analysis of the current landscape to see where the gaps are, and we believe we've got the answers to fill those gaps. So if you're looking for an organization that doesn't just live the rhetoric or speak it, but actually implement, then this is the party that you need to look at. You need to look at the UDM for implementation. There are many policies. I must say, Dr. Fundi, there are many great policies in South Africa. Our challenge is that they are not being implemented.
Execution.
So if you are looking for individuals or an organization with expertise, lived expertise, proven track record of implementation, look no further than the UDM. I come with a wealth of experience from a governance perspective. So obviously, given the fact that it's a high priority area for us, I will be looking closely in governance and ensuring that there's accountability and transparency so we can buy the trust of or gain the trust of the public. So we are intentional in terms of the implementation of the priority areas that we've identified. And you will see over time that the UDM means business. And we intend on taking over from the current government, even if it's in a form of a coalition government.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Little Honoro, for your 1 hour. It flew past so quickly, and I'm sure it's not the last time we're talking to you, you know, but we have to also thank the people who joined us via YouTube and also via Facebook. And thank you to Yonela for working behind the scenes and ensuring that you join us. So I just want to wish you and your party all the best on the 29th of May. All right?
Thank you so much, Dr. Fundi. I just want to say also one more thing before we log off from here. You can see that I am now representing the UDM as a young, bright mind and a woman. So what we are seeing as the UDM is the fact that women are at the forefront of it, or we recognize women. So I know that there's been this ideology that Ntate Holomisa is the only person in the leadership position with the deputy president being a male. But here's an example of a woman that's in the leadership position and a young person at that.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I think that will already, bring you guys a lot of votes. And so that's why I'm saying all the best so that you can get into that legislature in Gauteng. Is it what you are looking for, or you want to go to Cape Town?
I'm going to Parliament. I'm going to Parliament to be the voice for the voiceless and to ensure change in Parliament. So the UDM is going to transition or transform from a 2-seat party to a 20-seat party.
Beautiful, beautiful, and let's adjourn the conversation now. But we look forward to seeing you guys getting those 20 seats and making waves in Parliament. There are a lot of old people there who often sleep when serious things are being discussed. And I think it's time that those people need to spend more time with their grandchildren, and a younger cohort of parliamentarians actually goes there and shape South Africa, make sure that we get the South Africa that we deserve. At this moment, there are quite a number of challenges, and we need young minds. If things could not be implemented in 30 years, maybe it's about time that new ideas do come to the fore. So thank you very much. And thank you to all of the people who joined us in this conversation on Facebook and YouTube. And also, Ionela, thank you very much. And good evening to you.
Thank you very much for inviting the UDM. You have a good evening.
Evening. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.